GIS is an acronym for Geographic Information Systems. GIS is most commonly used for a tool to assist in analyzing data. Whenever we think of data, a lot of times the geographic component or the geography is left out. And for Native communities specifically, when we start analyzing data using geography or location, we start to see a whole different set of circumstances or a whole different set of possibilities that start emerging from that data. So using GIS as a tool to empower Native communities is not necessarily a new concept, but it is something that is changing the direction of where tribal information management is going. Tribes are using GIS for a number of different capacities, everything from economic development to land management to environmental resources, planning locations for community centers, just almost any aspect you can think of. When we think of GIS in Indian country, I often think of the way to look at it is anything that you can relate to a place. GIS is a tool to manage that. And when we think of tribal communities, everything relates either to a place or to a person. And if we start analyzing the data using that location information, it starts revealing all sorts of new and interesting things that may not have been seen before. I became involved in GIS education a number of years back, and it actually stemmed from the concept that I was actually involved in GIS professionally, and got involved in effectively teaching coworkers originally. And through that process, I started noticing that more and more tribal communities were starting to adopt the idea of GIS, and there was a large need to get more Native people educated on what GIS was and how to use it. Kind of through that process, I was also kind of exposed to some of the successes in Indian country as to how GIS has really made a difference, and that kind of inspired me to go out and try to work with more and more tribal communities to further the use of the tools. I think it's really important for Native youth to take a look at the idea of GIS. It is, outside of Indian country, it is one of the fastest growing tech industries worldwide to date. And it's basically because the idea of infusing geography into it with modern technology, it is just exploding. Everybody has smartphones with maps on them. Everybody's used to looking at things on a map. So as a global kind of scenario, it is a very vastly expanding space. But particularly with tribal communities, it's really, really important because as time goes on, our tribal populations are increasing. The demands on the tribe are increasing. But typically and historically, the land base isn't. The resources are not. So coming up with more creative ways to manage that information and make the best decisions is becoming more and more of a necessity. And when we look at GIS used in Indian country, one of the things that we run into time and again is the fact that we need more tribal members educated in how to use these tools. So for Native youth to be learning this at a young age is very valuable, and it's going to be a growing demand for them as time continues on. My role with the Tribal Ambassadors Technology Program has been coming out for the last 2 years, every other month, working with the kids, getting them trained in the basic functions of GIS, helping them to develop the data sets that will eventually turn into the exhibits or some of the exhibits within the California Indian Museum, as well as trying to just kind of coach and mentor the kids to see who in the group is really interested in GIS, embracing it, and maybe perhaps we're making a path for one of them, as they get older. I guess the kids, how they're taking to the technology, it's a lot different than it is with adults. I work with adults in tribal communities literally all over the United States. And a lot of times when we're dealing with adults, it's sometimes the learning curve. It's, the newer technology with folks that didn't grow up with it. It's a lot tougher to learn it and embrace it and really want to work with it. And the one thing with the kids that is always refreshing is they're not afraid of the technology. That part doesn't scare them. They're willing to try anything. And I think when you kind of combine the idea that they're willing to try anything with the technology, and you kind of put that together with the situations and the issues that are out there, we have the potential for something really great.